Climate action and inclusion. And it was announced by the President-elect of the General Assembly, Mr. Tijani Mohamed Bande, the permanent representative of Nigeria to the United Nations. The theme of the PGA is timely, and we believe it resonates with South Africa's 7 priorities as outlined by President Ramaphosa during the State of the Nation address on 20th June this year. I'm sure you remember these 7 themes. They are economic transformation and job creation, education, skills and health, consolidating the social wage through reliable and quality basic services, spatial integration, human settlements and local government, and fifthly, social cohesion and safe communities. 6, building a capable, ethical and developmental state. And 7th, our particular interest, a better Africa and world. The General Assembly debate affords member states of the United Nations an opportunity to address issues of national, regional, and international importance. So we may make reference to particular issues related to our own country, South Africa, or may indeed refer to SADC or the continent of Africa, or be concerned about referring to global matters that might not be at our doorstep. We intend to utilize the opportunity to also speak of the unfortunate and tragic events of the past 2 weeks and to repeat our belief in African unity, peace and friendship. Our participation in UNGA will provide us with the opportunity to interact with our counterparts across the globe, and we have a very, very busy program, and to articulate South Africa's perspective on the General Assembly theme, which I find to be quite a full and interesting theme. Our delegation will consist of the Minister of Health, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, the Minister of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, Minister Barbara Creasy, and Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Jackson Mthembu. As you will see, our President has appointed a delegation that is consistent with our intention to use our resources maximally and curtail costs. Our approach to the upcoming Assembly will be to restate and affirm our commitment to multilateralism, which has become a very important subject in international deliberations. We will also affirm our belief in the central role of the United Nations in the system of global governance. Our overarching strategic approach will be predicated on the notion of an equitable, just and fair world order, buttressed by a multilateral system that includes respect for international law. I'm sure colleagues that have been meeting with me, other foreign ministers, have now become familiar with my refrain that we believe deliberations on reform of the United Nations must be opened up and lead to a conclusion that is the kind of inclusion that we seek. We will repeat some of this at the UN General Assembly. Our participation in the general debate will provide us with an opportunity to provide an assessment of the current global and continental peace, security and development challenges, as well as to lay out our vision for the African continent as well as for the world. We will articulate South Africa's objectives and our program as a non-permanent member of the 15-member UN Security Council from 2019 to 2020. Our commitment to reform of these structures and our commitment to building on our late founding President Nelson Mandela's legacy of working towards a peaceful, just and prosperous world. One of South Africa's strategic foci in international engagements is to defend and promote the primacy of institutions of global governance as the vehicles through which the current challenges facing the international community, including in areas of peace and security, sustainable development, human rights, and the reform of global governance, could be resolved. You would see that in some parts of the world there's an attempt to create fora that fall outside of the UN system. We believe we must strengthen the UN system as an inclusive, multilateral forum in which all countries of the world are represented, and that it is in that space that we need to agree on what should be done to ensure peace, to ensure development, to ensure world stability. We also intend to highlight South Africa's role in the implementation of the African Union's Agenda 2063, and of course our commitment to the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Furthermore, we intend to argue for stronger and enhanced coordination between the African Union and the United Nations, especially in the resolution of conflicts on the African continent. This year, UNGA coincides with the inaugural year of the Nelson Mandela Decade for Peace, which is 2019 to 2028. This decade was adopted at the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit in September 2018 as a contribution to the strengthening of multilateralism and as a means of advancing the values and principles of our President Mandela, as well as those of the Charter of the United Nations. We will encourage all member states and the international community to be guided by the Nelson Mandela Decade for Peace in their efforts to preserve multilateralism and to achieve peace, cooperation, and respect for the principles and objectives of the UN Charter. So we will really highlight and stress on these matters in our contributions. There will be a number of high-level meetings on the margins of the general debate. And we also will have opportunities for bilateral meetings with close partners of South Africa, as well as attendance at the various side events organized as part of the General Assembly. We already have a number of invitations for the South African ministerial delegation, and we will spread ourselves to ensure South Africa's presence in a number of these. The following high-level events have already been confirmed. On the 23rd of September, the Secretary General will be hosting a high-level meeting on universal health coverage. And on that day as well, we'll have the Secretary General's Climate Action Summit, where heads of state will speak to matters of climate change and announce, it is anticipated, dedicated commitments to responding to the challenges of climate change. On the 24th and 25th September, there'll be hosted a high-level political forum on sustainable development. On the 26th September, a high-level dialogue on financing for development, a very important subject given the ambitions of Africa with respect to infrastructure and other areas of development. On the 26th of September, there'll be a high-level meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. On the 27th of September, a high-level meeting to review progress made in addressing the priorities of small island developing states through the implementation of the Samoa pathway. So all of these will be meetings to which either ministers or officials will be designated to attend. And I hope this gives the people of South Africa a clearer idea of what the United Nations 74th General Assembly will consist of. Thank you very much, colleagues, for being present here.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now quickly, you identify yourself in the house. Start at the back. Hands. Yeah, we'll come this way.
Hi, good day, Minister. It's Kai here from DNCA. So, show the Minister, you have a very enormous task of dealing with the recent events we've seen in South Africa. And obviously the recent events as well, they're not really boding well for your position in Africa as a mediator in so many fronts. So what's going to be an overarching message you're going to send out there, and also trying to convince the international community that actually South Africa is not a xenophobic nation? Thank you.
Second hand was here.
Minister, it's now from Jacaranda FM. Sorry, but I'm just going to repeat what my colleague said about I just wanted to know, how are you going to handle if there is any backlash that you're going to receive when you're going to this General Assembly? And also, we understand that the President has released a group of delegates to go into Africa to convey the message of anti-xenophobia. Do you mind just giving us insight into that, if you have intel? Thank you so much.
See, we're not winning with this thing.
Minister, it's Angelo Coppola from China Global Television. Good afternoon. On my colleague from Jacaranda's question, just if you could expand, if possible, a little on the envoy's messaging that's going to be going out.
And so we come out of that briefing by the International Relations Ministry, the Minister there, Naledi Pandor, just explaining to South Africans what it is that she and the South African delegation will be communicating at the United Nations General Assembly this year. Of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa will not be attending, as he's decided to rather focus on home issues. We're going to go for a quick break and have more news for you thereafter.